Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a major issue that's silently crippling landlords in small cities. Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns to be specific. It's a scam that's happening right under our noses, and it involves big companies, brokers, and some shady business practices that leave landlords completely exposed. Let's break it down. So, here's how it typically starts. Big companies, especially those expanding to smaller cities, find landlords who have property to rent out. The landlords, eager to secure a long-term tenant, are approached by brokers representing these companies. At first, everything looks promising, right? A stable tenant, a long-term lease, and a seemingly secure income for the landlord. But here's where the scam begins. These companies ask the landlord to make significant investments upfront. Things like installing high-end HVAC systems, backup generators, and sometimes even more expensive infrastructure. The landlord, trusting that they'll get long-term returns, agrees to these demands. Once the infrastructure is set up, the lease agreement is signed. This is where the big companies lock in their position. They set the rent at a rate that is lower than the industrial standard, which sounds like a great deal for the landlord initially. They promise stability, a long-term relationship, often for 5, 10, or even 15 years. But what happens next is where the story takes a dark turn. A year goes by, maybe 2. The business is good, everything looks fine, but suddenly, the company starts playing mind games. After a couple of years, once the landlord has spent a huge amount on infrastructure and improvements, the company starts pressuring them to reduce the rent. They claim the market isn't doing as well as expected, or that their business is struggling. But the reality? The company is doing just fine. In fact, they've probably increased their revenue, but they still want to squeeze the landlord for more savings. Take a company like Reliance Smart or Chroma, for example. These brands have massive expansion plans, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. They sign leases, set up shop, and then, when everything is running smoothly, they start negotiating rent reductions, even though their sales are through the roof. It's not a question of business performance, it's a question of how much they can push the landlord. They'll even use tactics like, "We're considering moving to another location," or "We're not happy with the area anymore." The truth is, they know the landlord is in a vulnerable position, having invested heavily into the space, and they play on that desperation. So, here's the vicious cycle that kicks in. The landlord, trying to cover their initial investment, has no choice but to agree to the reduced rent. And guess what? Now they're stuck with a low rental yield. The business is doing fine, but the landlord's profit margin is shrinking. The company knows this, and they continue to exploit it year after year. And this isn't just one isolated incident. It's happening with major retail chains like Big Bazaar, or even small outlets like Muthoot Finance or Domino's. These companies are all doing the same thing, asking landlords for heavy upfront investments, locking them into long-term leases at low rent, and then pushing to reduce rent when they know the landlord can't afford to lose the tenant. Let's step back for a moment. Who's really winning here? It's certainly not the landlord. While they've been forced to make massive investments with no return, the brokers and companies are making off with huge profits. These companies know they can exploit the system in smaller cities, where the demand for good commercial space is high, and the landlords are more likely to agree to these terms out of desperation or inexperience. Look at companies like Chroma, for instance. With their nationwide retail model, they're always in demand for spaces in growing cities. Brokers know this and use it to their advantage, luring landlords into a deal that initially seems profitable. But over time, the landlord is left holding the bag with investments that haven't paid off. The real consequence of all this? Landlords are left with properties that are barely profitable. They may have spent years paying back loans for infrastructure, and the time it takes to cover those investments just keeps stretching. Their once promising business venture turns into a money pit, and often they'll just be forced to sell out at a loss. And in the meantime, companies like Reliance Smart or Domino's continue to expand, opening up new stores while the landlords who made their investments lose out on the expected returns. Now, if you're a landlord, you're probably wondering, how do you protect yourself from this kind of scam? First, always consult a lawyer before signing any lease. Get someone who understands the industry and who can look at the fine print. Second, never agree to cover all the major infrastructure costs upfront. Make sure it's split, or that the company contributes. And most importantly, don't let the company bully you into reducing the rent once you've signed the lease. Remember, your investment and your business matter too. Stay firm on your terms. This scam is happening all over Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, and it's time we bring it to light. If you're a landlord or know someone who's dealing with this, share this video. Knowledge is power, and it's time we put an end to these unethical business practices. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth videos like this. Stay smart, stay safe, don't get scammed.